How big should Maple Leafs GM Brad Treliving swing at the trade deadline? Hey everyone, welcome to Inside the Leafs. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun Maple Leafs writers Terry Koshan and Lance Hornby. And guys, the trade deadline rapidly approaching Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. And as you would expect, the Maple Leafs have been tied to numerous names, whether it's Mikko Rantanen, Braden Shen, or even Erasmus Ristolainen. There are seemingly plenty of possibilities for GM Brad Treliving. Lance, looking at all the names that have been thrown out over the last few weeks, is there one that stands out to you as someone that could be a strong fit for this Leafs team?
Well, I think everyone agrees that a reunion of Craig Berube and Braden Shen would make a lot of sense. However, St. Louis still in the fight, and there's a couple of other names out there may be predicated on the next couple of nights, and when those teams decide that they're going to be sellers versus buyers. But you have Scott Laughton there, a local boy who's been a mentioned many times with Toronto. You have interesting on defense. I mean, they've gone the Luke Shen route before. A name that sort of intriguing to me would be Radko Gudas in Anaheim. Not that when you think about all the run-ins they've had going back to that Florida series a couple of years ago, that's an interesting one as well. And there's there a team like Boston. There's been talk of Trent Frederick maybe moving. He's hurt right now, but you got to think of players who've hurt the Leafs over time, and he is certainly one of them. Ricard Raquel in Pittsburgh is another guy who's lit them up, and of course they're looking to move some bodies too. So a lot of intriguing people there. Depends whether or not you believe Brad Treliving in that he's going to be conservative. I believe this man can help himself come trade deadline day. I think he's going to do something. It may be that he's having a hard time reading the market right now too, because again, some teams are still in contention and thus may not move. So it's going to going to be interesting. And what is true today, gentlemen, may not be true tomorrow as far as the Leafs' zeal to complete a deal by Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm with Lance on Braden Shen. I think one guy, Treliving doesn't want rentals, but I think one guy that would be a rental, I suppose, is Brock Nelson. If they ever get him out of the island, Lou Lamoriello, Mr. Secret, hasn't made it clear to fellow GMs what he plans to do with Brock Nelson. He's going to be UFA this summer. Islanders convince themselves maybe they're still in a playoff race here. He would be a guy that I think would really help the Leafs. There's no doubt about that. Certainly someone who can move in that second line center spot if required. We know what Craig Berube thinks of Braden Shen. He was open with his love for the player during the Leafs trip last week, and there's no secret there. And again, Shen, 3 years still remaining at 6.5. It's not a small chunk of change. I like Scott Laughton because he only has another year left at $3 million, awfully affordable, and a guy who could come in and obviously help right away. But those are the three up front. I think there could be something lesser happens. And as far as the blue line goes, if it's a right shot defenseman, is it a David Savard type? Lance mentioned Radko Gudas. Gudas isn't really a guy that you've really heard too much about on the open market, but I suppose he could be available if the price was right. Rich Lane in Philadelphia would be another one, but we'll have to see. The fact of the matter is, and maybe we'll get into this with the next question, I'm not convinced the teams are lining up at Brad Treliving's door to get prospects out of the Toronto organization. We're talking about good prospects. Are they blue chip? None of them are, I think. And, that could tie Brad Treliving's hands when it does come time to make a deal. And, he doesn't have the first round pick this year either. So do you trade next year as well? We'll have to see. But if I'm going for a center, if it's clear that Shen isn't going to be moving, I think Brock Nelson would be the guy that they should try to get.
Yeah, and I'd quickly put in too that there's muddying the waters is that some of those Leafs that were deemed to be the guys who were most expendable in terms of the players that they had to get depth for, like Max Domi and Nick Robertson, are suddenly turning it on a little bit, with the exception of the game against San Jose last night. That's kind of muddying the picture a bit.
Well, as you state, Terry, if you're going to have to get something, you're going to have to give something up. And unfortunately for the Leafs, the cupboard isn't exactly stocked these days. Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton, next year's first round pick really are the biggest trade chips that have been talked about the most. Is there anything that you would even consider not that you would not want to put on the table in a potential deal, or is really everything have to be on the table if you're Brad Treliving, if you're hoping to make a deal before Friday's trade deadline?
Well, if we're talking about the three prospects in Minton, Cowan, and Ben Danford and Oshawa, then next year's first rounder, that should all be on the table in my mind. One reason is we're not, like I said, we're not talking about, all due respect to the three, I don't think we're talking about organizational players who are going to be stars for years to come. They're going to be good players, perhaps. We don't know that yet. Um, and you can get, as far as the first round pick goes, no, there isn't one this year. You trade next year, so that's 2 years in a row. Well, you remind people, Matthew Nyes was a second round pick. One of the players we're talking about now, Fraser Minton, was a second round pick. Bobby McMahon wasn't picked anywhere. I mean, there are players to be found beyond the first round, and by no means is a first round pick ensure that you're going to have success in the end. At least have a lot of them right now, and we know how good their playoff run has been. So, yeah, I don't think anything should be off the table. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that if Brad Treliving has pushed those chips to the middle, that teams are going to be lining up saying, okay, I want this, this, and this. We'll have to see how it plays out. In the end, would he prefer not to trade some of these guys? Probably, because I still think he needs something in the cupboard for down the road. But yeah, like I say, put it all out there and see what happens. But recognize that just because you do, it doesn't necessarily mean that trades are going to happen. But we'll have to see. We're going to know within 3 days here. But yeah, I wouldn't be in an overly protective mode if I was Brad Treliving right now.
I guess I'd look at it from this perspective. It had to be, and Terry can weigh in on this too. If it had to be Cowan or Minton, which one would you move? I would. I just like Minton long term. I think he's like a John Tavares in waiting, a very intelligent player, and certainly not as flashy the big scorer that Cowan is. But certainly Minton brings the size, and there's a lot of things about that guy I like, and of course, now watch them deal. Watch them deal Cowan and have him win the Hart Trophy or something. But that would be certainly something I'd look at. And to Terry's point about the first rounders, for sure. I mean, you can lose. Maybe you can deal that first rounder, and if you get a second back, then that's another. It's another chip. The Leafs have been very good. I know they've switched scouting bosses, but they've had some success with second rounds. And I guess the other thing would be, a guy they might deal would be Dennis Hildeby. They seem to have a lot of goaltending depth. They have the two Russians coming up, so there's someone they might trade. I know that wasn't the thrust of the question, but that's those are some of the things to consider. Terry says the cupboard's kind of bare right now, so it's very difficult. It's great to talk about going all in, but in doing so, you do have to show a little bit of caution.
One thing I would say about the first round pick too is, in all likelihood, next year it's going to be a late one as well. So you're getting into the 25 to 32 range. You have no idea if this player is going to develop and become something for you. And if another team has your pick at that point, they won't either. You just don't, not that deep into the first round, no matter how good the 2026 prospect pool will be. So, and no matter what, really, too, that player isn't going to be helping you for a few years. And by the time that would happen in Toronto, we might have cycled out of this, era, if you will. So we'll have to see where it goes. Like I said, but fully comfortable if that's what happens for Treliving, and he has to use that first rounder next year.
Well, in a conference this year, an Eastern Conference that seems pretty wide open, it might suit the Maple Leafs to try to improve this team as much as they can to take a big swing here heading down the stretch. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Terry Koshan and Lance Hornby, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.